Hi, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms where I give you a heads up about upcoming shows and which date and time they will be aired. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the shows, MP3 files which you can download, or links to your favorite platform like iTunes, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and all other major sources. You can find information for upcoming and past talk show appearances as well as new book projects at MarlenePardo.com. You can also purchase books and merchandise there. And you can visit my author page on Amazon at Marlene Pardo Pellicer. Due to popular demand, I'm narrating my True Believer stories that I've collected throughout the years in a new series called Supernatural Storytime. You can find links at supernaturalstorytime.com. If you are into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate some of those at Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If you would like to read noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird, you can visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at MiamiGhostChronicles.com. I do want to thank you all for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi everybody, this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, Stories of the Supernatural. How is everybody doing today? Good, I hope. I'm doing good. Even though I know you guys are not going to, again, hear this for a little bit, we're here kind of mid-January 2020, and everything is good. Like everybody else, I'm resisting trying to do the typical New Year's resolution, whether it's lose weight, exercise, blah, blah, blah. I mean, to be honest with you, I've had those all along, but the only one that I don't want to say I committed to, I just decided to end up procrastination on was getting rid of stuff. Things that you put away and you're like, oh, yeah, I could still use that someday, whatever. And we decided, it was like, we made a hard and fast rule in the household. If we haven't used it for a year, and it's something like winter clothes, which, by the way, people in South Florida, our winter clothes will last about 25 years because, of course, we hardly ever use them. Outside of that, we made a hard and fast rule, and we're going that room by room thing. And it's if we're either donating it, where if it's really just used, we're taking it to the dump. And as a matter of fact, yesterday we put out a big easy chair, a mirror, and a lamp outside, like on a curb thing, and it was gone in half an hour. So to us, it's really good that somebody can make use of it, and that sometimes I think when people start that thing about, well, what do I do with extra stuff? You realize that you can benefit somebody if you don't want to give it to, besides thrift stores. I mean, there's different thrift stores run by different entities, but there's a lot of people out there that believe it or not, as long as, something's in decent shape, they can make good use of it. And that's what we did. It felt good. But yeah, I want to say of all the typical New Year's resolution kind of deals, which, by the way, I'm going to use the E word, and you all know what my E word is. It's called execute. Okay, execute, which is, after a while, you can only talk about it or think about it or plan it, or take, do risk assessment on it. You have to execute. And that's what we said. Okay, no more procrastination, execute. And if it turns out that, wow, we got rid of something that now we need, we'll just have to go get another one or rent it or whatever the case might be. But overall, so far, you realize, almost like when you move out of a place that you realize how much junk you have, stuff. And I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good about getting rid of stuff along. I'm not saying I'm a hoarder. On the contrary. But you'd be surprised how many things you put away, tuck away in the closet, in the drawer, back there behind the stuff. And you have it real neat. It's not like it's a mess. And you kind of and then time, like I tell everybody, I said last week, it's 2020, here we are. Then you realize, man, I'm not going to use this. It's in great shape, or it's almost new, or when I bought it, and that's another thing. You buy something and you do this. I'm gonna do this with it. I'm gonna bake this with it. I'm gonna whatever, and then all of a sudden, and it, our ego does not want to admit you wasted your money. You either lacked commitment, okay, or it wasn't what you expected. You didn't find out enough about it, or you didn't figure it into your timetable of things. And a lot of us have sometimes a difficult time with admitting, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have bought this. Okay, or I thought I was going to, but it's not really what I thought. We want to hold on to that. No, it's just, when I have enough time, I'll do that baking. Well, I'm using baking as an example, whatever the case might be. And by the way, this goes along the same lines. It doesn't really, what is it? The more costlier the item, the harder we have a time. Like, and I'm sure everybody's heard those stories about people that they buy those exercise bicycles or gyms, and before you know it, they're throwing their clothing. It becomes the place to hang your stuff on. Some of those things cost a lot of money, and you'd be surprised in about 6 months. Look in the wanted, all these wanted apps for people selling stuff. You'd be surprised how many of those you're going to find either being sold really, really cheap or being given away. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's what it is. But anyway, let's get down to the interesting stuff. And of course, what I'm talking about is who my guest is. And you guys are going to be super excited because we're going to talk about something that you guys like to hear about, which is not only the paranormal, but demonology. And the guest tonight is a gentleman by the name of Nathan Gillis. Now, he's an author, researcher, and a demonologist, and he's been studying the paranormal and the epiphenomena for most of his life. He's lived in a haunted house, and of course we're going to ask him about that. And he spent 20 years researching what it was that he encountered there. Also, he's the founder of the Preternatural Epiphenomenal Philosophy, and he sought to redefine the nature of haunting, or the phenomena of haunting, ghost and high strangeness. He's often quoted for his concept of the demonic, as in the reason they are playing by different rules is because they are playing a different game. And we've talked about that before. So I know you guys are, get comfy. You know what I'm talking about? Get comfy because, or in other words, buckle yourself in for my cowards out there. I know there's some of you out there. This is the part of the paranormal that you're going, oh, no, Marlene, don't go there. But anyway, how are you doing tonight, Nathan?
I am very well. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to ask you what I ask all my guests. How did you get interested in the paranormal and then, of course, by extension into demonology? Childhood experience as an adult, what happened?
I moved into a house at the age of 8, and it was in Dayton, Ohio, because I'm a Buckeye. And
okay.
So I moved into a haunted house, really, at 8 years old, and I would experience just tons of manifestations. I'm talking shadow figures. There would be a dark cloud in the room at nighttime. It would just be hovering in the corner. And so, I really was approached by the paranormal, and before I even got into this, and I sought to experience and study the experiences of others to help me understand what it was that I experienced myself. But yeah, I was 8 years old. I had no frame of reference for what it was I was seeing and feeling and, going through.
Okay.
And so that I was also, my parents were also in the ministry. Okay. And 'cause my dad's a pastor. And so not only did I have no frame of reference, the clergy that I went to, my pastor had no frame of reference himself. And so that's how I got into this field.
I take it, were you the only one having experiences?
Yes.
Oh, lucky you.
Yeah, right. Won the lottery on that one.
Well, no, you know what? I hear about this, that there's a target person, sometimes even with, phenomena that's not subtle. In other words, I've heard that there's this one person who, for some reason, ends up being lucky you.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you, did your parents believe you when you told them what you were experiencing?
I think that over a period of time, it was almost irrefutable. I mean, as an 8, 9-year-old kid, I would have nightmares of someone committing suicide and taking drugs. It was all in black and white. It was the same nightmare, and I had no idea what drugs were at that age. So again, but after a while, I mean, they really had no choice but to accept the fact that I was really experiencing something that was otherworldly, for lack of a better term. So yeah, I mean, once I flunked 2 grades, and I would stay up the whole night with the lights on because I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
It was so terrifying.
Yes, yeah. This is something that, you know what, kids can fake a lot of stuff, but not things like this, and not for that duration. Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do you think that was it, and I'm going to use a typical, was it intelligent or was it residual, as in you were just witnessing it, or was it interacting with you?
It would interact with me, and it would follow me. I would, yeah, I remember one time I was spending the night at a friend's house between church services on Sunday, and I was sleeping, and I heard it begin to walk up my friend's stairwell, and you could just hear the weight displacement and the creaking of the wood, and I just sat there crying my eyes out. And, it affected me deeply, as a haunting would. Everyone should, at least. I mean, it's a crazy phenomenon itself. But that's what got me into this. And for the last 20 years, I have given my life to researching this and really shedding more light into this field.
Was there a triggering event when you started seeing this, or did it just start happening?
It just started happening. Absolutely. And I remember one night I was a little guy, and I saw a shadow figure staring into my room, and it was at nighttime, but I could still see something that was darker than dark. And obviously, we've all heard that in this field. Right. But it was staring at me. It had no eyes, and it felt like he was looking through me. So the next day I get up to go to school, and it was the winter time, and I walked outside and I saw 2 footprints right by my window. Well, as a little tyke, it's hard to understand heights and things because, we're kids. I was playing video games, and I never even thought about how tall it was or how tall someone had to be to look past my window sill. So we're talking 6, 7, 8 feet. I mean, it was crazy. Okay. So yeah, there was no trigger event at all. I remember being 8 years old, and at the open house, I was given a room. My dad told me, this is where you're going to be. And I saw a little girl underneath a bed, and she was hiding in fear. And that was when I knew, okay, there's something with this house.
Oh, so from the moment you guys went to look at the house, you saw that.
Yes.
So there was something there already to begin with.
Oh yeah. It was resident, and it was malevolent. And I remember when my dad first realized, okay, Nathan is really experiencing something. He actually began to break down and said, you know what? He says, I really do believe that either something bad happened here or someone died in this house.
Right. And did you have any siblings, or was it just you?
Well, I had a little brother. Still have him. And but he was so young. There's 8 years and just years apart between he and I. Okay. But so 9 and 10 years old. Yeah. He was but he wasn't old enough to understand anything. Right. And for that matter, neither was I. And that's why I'm here to.
No. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, and I know what you're saying, but sometimes you'll have siblings that are close, and they both kind of, and it's really funny because, like you said, you'll have one of them who sees and experiences everything, and the other one's like, "What? I don't, nothing happens to them. They're like totally untouched by everything that's going on." Mm-hmm. So, how long were you living in that house? We
lived there for about, let's say, 8 years, I think.
That must have been a long 8 years.
It was, and but strangely enough, everything that I experienced there, that haunting, came to a head one night, and I just got sick of it. I was wore out. Okay. Because I was staying up all night with the lights on.
Okay.
I would go to school the next day and I would fall asleep at school. I mean, it was catastrophic.
So in other words, you never, because I've heard of people that, you never got used to it. How's that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. And whenever I would enter my room, it would always make me feel like I was a little spot in space. Like it was so huge. That's what it made me feel like. Like I was completely meaningless in its presence.
So do you now, and I don't know if you realized it then or after the fact, was this a human or a non-human entity?
Well, that's getting into my demonology because I don't believe that we're dealing with non-human entities.
Okay.
At all. That's my position. We can get to that later.
Oh,
but
no. And I'm glad because, we'll talk absolutely about that because I know sometimes a lot of in the paranormal, if it's even any negativity is immediately written off to the D word, demons or non. I use non-human because to me, sometimes it's like, okay, let's not, not everything that's negative falls into that category right off the bat.
Right.
So as a teenager, one day, you just got fed up with the whole thing?
I really did. I mean, at a certain point, your life just changes dramatically. Okay. And, the depression, the fear, I mean, it was a paralyzing fear. So finally, one night, I couldn't take it anymore. And, it was back again, and it was just intimidating. It was terrifying. And so I went into the bathroom, and I just cried. I just collapsed and started bawling.
Okay.
And finally I just said, you know what? I said, I can't do this anymore. And I said, God, I said, I don't know what else to do. I don't know who to go to. I can't talk to anybody about it. A 9-year-old kid going through something like that.
Yes.
A lot of people will just kind of shrug it off and say, okay, maybe you're just depressed. Well, I finally said, you know what? I felt it actually walk into the bathroom with me. Yeah. And I was crying and praying. I said, you know what? I said, I'm done. I said, I can't do this anymore. I said, I don't know what the purpose of this is. I don't know why. And I talked to it too. I said, I don't know why you're here. I don't know what you want from me. But I said, you're stalking me. When I go hang out with my friends, you're there. I can feel you when I go, like I said, a sleepover. You're there with me.
It was always around you.
Yes. It was always around me. And that night, something broke. And I didn't understand the width and breadth of it till later on in my life, but I felt just a complete release of energy. And it's like a negative attachment, a parasitic entity. When it detaches itself from you, everything changes in your life.
Yes, it does.
And everything did. And that's why I'm a survivor, as we all are who have experienced haunting phenomena. We are survivors. Yes. And I'm so glad to be a part of some of the most amazing people in the world.
Did you ever see that little girl again?
No, I did not. It was very interesting, though. She was a beautiful little girl. She had black hair, and she was in a white linen dress that was turn of the century.
Okay.
And it was interesting because I remember telling my dad, I said, man, I saw a little girl underneath the bed. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, yeah, man. I said, it's weird. I said, she was really scared. She was hiding from us underneath her bed. And my dad was like, well, son, that was an elderly couple who passed away. And they didn't have any kids. And then, imagine that. Then I go, oh, maybe I should have told him that.
Well, how old was that house?
I really don't know. I know I went back to it about 2 years ago and talked to some of my neighbors, and, awesome people. But that house has not been able to. Everybody who moves into that house lasts for maybe 6 months, 7 months, and they're out. So, and one day I hope to go back and maybe do a video blog about it.
Okay. The reason why I asked about the little girl was I was thinking, was this a little girl, a real little girl, or was it something impersonating a little girl? Mm-hmm. So okay, you move out, and what happened?
I still experienced high strangeness.
Okay.
I mean, really weird stuff. We moved out to a different part of Dayton, Ohio, and I remember one night. Something, I don't know if it was that same entity, but something came into my room and knocked a glass off of a bar stool I had in my room. And that was pretty traumatizing. I mean, out of nowhere, just you see something fly and break and shatter across the wall, So, but that was it. After that, little oddities would occur in my life, but nothing to that brevity. I mean, that was a profound experience that I went through. But
Okay.
so that's what really turned my head to this field, and that's why I've studied. I've poured myself into the material.
Okay.
I've collected so many data samples all across the world, and it's a vast subject. But I'm telling you guys, there's a lot coming to the surface here, and this year alone, 2020, that will revolutionize the entirety of the paranormal field.
I love to hear that because I want to say there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to
Yeah.
the paranormal.
Hmm.
I'm not going to say it's all wrong. There's a lot of stuff that's accurate, and in some cases, it's been good in the way it's become a little bit more mainstream. But along with it has been a lot of misconceptions, sometimes willingly or on purpose or not on purpose, that have been created.
Hmm.
As far as what we're talking about, which is discarnate, human souls, spirits, whatever you want to call them.
Hmm.
Um, Now, what happened? And I'm curious if you went to any place that either you knew was haunted or you found out was haunted. Were you able to see things, or was just something that between you and whatever that was?
No, that actually did turn into a gift.
Okay.
That at first it was a curse, but later on in life it was actually a gift. I can go into places, and I have, where I can tell it's haunted. Like I get chest palpitations, my heart will start pounding.
Okay.
I'll get a headache, I'll get nauseous, and especially with malevolent entities,
Okay.
very sensitive to them. I mean, I had a case in Dayton, Ohio,
Mm-hmm.
where I was at a restaurant and somebody had called me and said, "Listen, there was a murder at this house, and we're having a lot of paranormal activity, and we need you to come over and pray with us, or do whatever you do." I'm not saying this is not me bragging. I'm saying that because of what I went through, like this helped me step
Mm-hmm.
into a dimension of sensitivity that otherwise I would have never had. But they invited me out, and before I got there, I had messaged the person back, and I said, "Okay," I said, I'm at the house right now. I don't know how. I just am. I said, "I'm walking up the steps. I'm going to a closet. There's an entity in a closet upstairs, and you're in a room."
Okay.
And she freaked out because she said, "I was just in that closet tonight. I know exactly what you're talking about." So it was that gifting has added a tremendous amount of value to my research, because now I don't just have to rely on other people's experiences. Now I can have sample data from my own life.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, that validation that sometimes I say it's not whether even you capture any evidence.
Right,
It's, as
right.
long as you are like being truthful with yourself. Let's say the audience of
Yeah.
one that I know this is real. I might not
Yes.
capture it,
Yes.
either like what they say AVPs or none of the gadgets that God. There's so many of them now.
Yeah, I know.
Deep down inside, this this is not me making this up. This is not something that I'm ignoring a plausible explanation for it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, once you do this more often, you do have this you get what I call the ting-a-ling-a-ling that lets you
Yeah.
know when you are either something is about to manifest or you're in the presence of, or something's going to
Yes.
happen that's not it's not the draft from the air conditioning in the other room, in other words.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
So at what point, I mean, was there any point once you started getting into this field,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not kidding when I said that thing about demonology, there's a bunch of paranormal researchers or ghost hunters or even legend trips, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that they're all good when it comes to your regular haunted house, haunted person, dead
Right.
person. They're good, but when you start using demonology, something that's truly malevolent and in some
Mm-hmm.
cases very dangerous, that's it. They're out of there. They're like,
They're out of there. Yeah, they clock out, don't they? They're
oh yeah,
gone.
yeah, yeah. They're like, including by the way, clergy.
Oh, mostly clergy.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the worst thing I experienced with clergy is a case I had where the family, I mean, the woman was being haunted by, I guess it would be an incubus, but we haven't had any real characteristics of it, but it would
Okay.
climb into bed with her at night.
Right.
And she went to her pastor, and the pastor said, "You need to go see a psychologist."
Yes.
And it devastated her. It hurt her
Right.
deeply. And that's why, because I was a minister for many years. I used to preach all around the country. And finally, I was like, you know what? These guys really have no clue. A lot of them don't.
Yes.
They're completely illiterate concerning this field. And I don't want to be limited to their antiquated dogmas.
Well, you know what? I've had investigations where I've had a similar repetition, and a lot of the times I'll have the people that have said, "Well, you know what? I don't think they believe me." I go, "No, they do believe you. No, but they do believe you. They're just scared. They don't want to admit that they're scared. So
Terrified.
They're poo-pooing it. They're handing you off, like you said, the psychologist, the psychiatrist, the you name it, because by the way, you're coming to them because you think this is a spiritual matter, as in the sense of what we're describing. So who better than somebody that supposedly deals in spirituality, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I thought too.
Right,
And
but they
so
believe you. As a matter of fact, they really believe you.
Yeah.
But how do they explain to you, I've been preaching faith and the power of the faith of the religion, whatever it might be, but I'm scared of this.
Right. Yeah. And if they were more honest with themselves and their people, I think that would, add a lot of value and insight to their responses to each other. But yeah, like I said, I went to clergy and they had no clue. And truthfully, and even some of the demonologists in this field, some they just don't know. They call themselves demonologists. They download a phone app, and next thing you know, they encounter something that transcends the microcosm of their world, and they're out the door with more. They're gone.
Yes, and people, because people don't realize that it's besides the Hollywood version of how whenever it's a demon or whatever, horrible things can befall you. Your head gets cut off. But I'm saying people don't realize that really a lot of, I don't want to say danger, but is the psychological damage that can come from this if you're not prepared for it.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of psychological warfare.
Yes.
And there are people, I mean, I know them personally, where they experienced a haunting 25, 50 years ago. And every day they live, it's almost a post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
It's still with them.
Yes.
Even though the fear and everything or the experiences are gone, the emotions are resident within every day they live.
Yes. Like if it happened like the week before, that, like you said, it's a PTSD scenario. The memories are fresh. The fear is fresh. The anxiety, like you said, where you can't sleep, whatever. And I want, for lack of a better word, these are people that are still being victimized by those experiences.
Yes.
So sometimes I laugh because I see people, not from a research capacity, but wanting to experience this. If I'm going to have a haunting, give me the hardcore stuff. And it's like, really? You sure about that?
Oh, they don't want it. They don't want it.
They don't want it. So let me ask you, did you start out as a minister, a paranormal researcher? How did you graduate from going to regular dead people to demonology or for dark hauntings? How did that happen?
I was in the ministry with my father, and I was in the deliverance ministry. So I would, administer and just deliver people from depression, addiction, or whatever, But I had always had an affinity for, I guess, the darker things, not in the sense of the demonic things, but, the preternatural topics. So my favorite shows as a kid was X-Files. And, and so that's really, and I started reading more into some of the greatest, the authors, John Keel, Malachi Martin, everybody knows the greats and everyone. But so the more I researched and the more I studied this, the more I was like, you know what, I really like this. I think this is a very fascinating topic.
Right.
And I think that we are encountering something that needs to be redefined and reevaluated. And so I began to employ my I wouldn't say rights, but I would begin to employ what I learned in ministry into the homes and helping other people in more of a secular fashion. And so together, I think that's really added a lot to my approach to this field.
Okay, what would you do, or how would you because this is and I'm going to ask your opinion on this. Like you mentioned earlier, you were ministering to people sometimes that were, like you said, addiction. Let's use addiction.
Okay.
Did you find that a lot of addictions were either being accelerated or basically created by attachments?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This is a very, very good topic. I'm thankful that thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, attachments. See, we use the word attachments. Antiquity uses the words demonic possession. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I am striving to do, and I'm working with a couple other parapsychologists in doing this, is we need to redefine some of our terms. Our vocabulary that we employed for 3,000 years no longer fits modernity. So the word demons and just the approach to a demon, the horns and hooves, and all of that needs to be thrown aside, and we have to start over, because the sample data from all around the world no longer substantiates the claims that my religion, even my religion, gave me about this whole thing. So attachments and demonic possession, the attachments occur, and I call them an exterior entity. And in my book, I'm writing a book on this already, and I'm trying to get through some of this vocabulary. But the EE is what I call an attachment, and it's the exterior entity.
Okay.
And then you have what I call the IE, which is the interior entity. The exterior entity and the interior. The reason I need to separate those two is because not only are they separate entities within themselves, but they're also separate stages of possession.
Yes.
And so in order to define both of them, we have to set them down and say, okay, they're not one and the same. They're different stages. And I've found in my research that in these stages have different motivations. They will employ different tactics to get consent within us. Mm-hmm. And so, so attachments, you mentioned attachments. One of the things with addiction that I have learned, even addiction, depression, suicidal tendencies, ideation, all of that. If you are a little bit depressed, mm-hmm. and if there is a negative entity, it will literally lay itself over you. And so the negative aspects of your life, depression, suicide, addiction, all of these things will become elevated.
Yes. Because
it's almost as if there's another weight there. Does it make sense?
Yes.
And so that is getting into the exterior entity. That addiction, depression, and all of these nuances of demonology, what they are there are rites where these entities will employ a way to make you yield consent to them. So watch this. This is what I teach everybody. Before you conform to the attachment, mm-hmm. the attachment will conform to you.
Right.
And so that's why when I deal with people, especially suicide, I work with a lot of people who have either tried suicide or have been thinking about it. Right. And once you start to help them realize that they're feeling emotions that are not theirs, right. Yeah, that's when that entity really starts to freak out, because now you're starting to wiggle loose that consent.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And
have you encountered any, what I call the piggyback, where the entity that's, like you said, whether it's oppression, obsession, whatever level, in maybe when it was alive, it was also being oppressed, obsessed by another entity. So in other words, you have like either you want to call it piggyback or cocoon or whatever, and then they're attached. Have you ever come across that where in reality there's more than just one entity? It's almost like a layered effect. Yes,
and I could say this much. I was out to dinner one night, and a girl, like a teenage girl with her boyfriend, came down, sat next to me. She had heard what I do, and so she sits down and she gives me this story, and it's a true story, but we figured out why she was there in the first place after. But she goes, I heard about what you do, and she said, I think that my friend needs your help. I said, what's going on? She said, well, my friend's grandfather he lives in a haunted house. It's an old house, and she said that one night he was chased out by a demon into his lawn, and she said he had a heart attack and he died. Cool. And she's like, so my best friend is really having a hard time with it, because they want to have the house. They inherited the house, but at the same time, if that thing's in there, they don't want it.
Right.
And so as she's talking to me, I saw a black cloud began to form over her shoulders.
Oh.
And it was almost like it stretched itself over her. And as soon as, while she's talking, it was almost as if I saw everything. I saw where she was hurting. And I said, listen, I realize that you think that you're here because of your friend's grandfather. I said, but I really believe that you're here because you're dealing with suicide. And I said, I see it right now. It was almost as if her pain was staring right at me, saying, hello, can you see me? And I did. And so I said, you know what? I said, there's an attachment of suicide on you. When I said that, the atmosphere changed.
Oh, wow.
And she started crying, bawling. Yes. And she grabs her boyfriend's hand, and her boyfriend, God bless him, he had no idea what was going on. He was just like, oh my God, because
Right.
So I said, listen, there's an attachment. I said, there's suicide on you right now. I said, I see it. And I said, right now, for the last maybe 4 or 5 months, you have been dealing with emotions that are not your own. And I said, so what's happening now is you'll act out emotions and things and feel, depressions and everything. I said, but those aren't yours. When I said that, she was crying. Her hand began to shake. She held out her wrist and she put my fingers on the scars of herself when she tried to slit her wrists.
Oh, she had already tried it?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. I was broke up. I was crying too because so I'm touching it, I'm right. Touching the scar. And I said, oh my God. She goes, yes. And you remember how she came to me about her friend's grandfather. This is very interesting. Right. I said, okay. Who committed suicide in your family? She said, my grandfather.
Ah, there you go.
And so what I began to do was help her grieve, because he committed suicide. I think it was in 2014. Okay. She had just tried this last year.
So it was a recent event for her as well.
Right, absolutely. And so what I began to do, and I employed what is called a Lurianic rite. Mm-hmm. Now, that is a reference to a Kabbalistic exorcist that lived in the 16th century. His name was Isaac Luria. And what Luria would do is he would talk to the attachment, to the entity within the person.
Right.
And he believed, this is awesome, he believed that if he could heal the entity in the person, mm-hmm. that the person themselves, they will also be healed in the process. And so I begin to talk to her and talk to the attachment through her by dealing with suicide and depression and helping her rebuild her self-esteem. And when I closed that door, you could feel a weight just completely lift in the atmosphere. And since then, her life has changed. Her relationships are better. And so, so when I go into a house, especially if it's a possession or attachment, I'm not looking for a what. I'm looking for a who, and I'm looking for a when. Who is this? And when did it exist? Right. And if I could get that history, then I can understand its relationship with the person it's attached to, and that then it's pretty much over from there.
You're right. And let me ask you, were you, when you did this with this girl, mm-hmm. okay, did you ever speak directly to the grandfather's spirit? Or was she the middle man?
She was the mediator. She was the middleman. So here's what I did.
Okay.
I spoke to his emotions by speaking to hers.
Okay.
And once I began to wiggle that attachment off, you could see her emotional state change.
All right.
And so I as well as the guilt. We got to talk about that.
Yes.
Now she feels guilty for what she did because I think he felt guilty for what he did.
Sure.
And so that's a very good question. But I did it in a way, but I didn't address him by name.
Let me ask you, why did he attach to her? How's that? Was it?
I do not know. I do not know.
All right.
And I think sometimes even this is a very strange labyrinth of ideas. Mm-hmm. But I think, and my research and my position now is that a lot of what we are experiencing are memories and emotions of the disincarnate
Okay.
And the question is, why are we experiencing them? For what reason? And are they using this as a form of communication? Or is it just their existence that is unchanging? In other words, there's really no future. All you're feeling is their past. So, and we can get into the epiphenomenal aspect of that, because I think that's going to change the field.
Let me ask you, so do you think, because I've heard of the theory, and I've had experience of this with clients, where sometimes what makes some people more vulnerable, like that question, like why her? He
Right.
committed suicide. Why would you have? Could there have been any, as far as her aura, a weakening, something that made her more vulnerable? Let's say of all the people that maybe he had in his family, that's why, whether it was guilt or wanting to comfort her, or perhaps trying to explain.
Yes.
Sometimes families are left in the lurch if it's something like an unexpected suicide, and of all the people that, or maybe she was more sensitive. We could have different reasons why one person is chosen.
Yes, absolutely. I think that I'll say this.
Okay.
I think that a lot of these people who have attachments are very sensitive to attachments because they're empaths.
Yes.
And they don't understand it yet. And a part of getting that attachment off of them includes helping them understand their calling in this field.
Yes.
Helping them understand how gifted they are and why it is they could drive past a house and act and as if it's almost as if they could smell what is in it.
Yes.
So a lot of these people that have come to me, especially the women, more so the women than men, I don't know why, but it just happens. But they're very sensitive. They're the people that everyone goes to for help. They're always, they're very sensitive. And I think that that in itself, it really attracts these entities if they're not malevolent.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah, in this case, what we were talking here was her grandfather.
Right.
Which, you know what? And I'm glad you pointed that out, Nathan, because a lot of times people sometimes, whether they think of it as a possession, like you said, in the traditional sense, they always think of it as malevolent, and they don't realize you could get an attachment from a loved one.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be, I went to this really bad haunted house and, I got jumped by this bad ghost no, it could be somebody close to you that for whatever reason, God knows human beings are very complex, even when dead. In other words, as to why they get stuck behind, and why in some cases they attach to even a loved one and they start affecting them on an emotional and sometimes even on a physical level. And in the case of what you described, where this poor girl is starting to be suicidal.
Right.
But I'm glad she came to you, of course, with the pretext of her friend's dilemma, which in reality was hers. Yeah,
wasn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And I have to tell everybody that anybody that is interested in this field, especially in the deliverance ministry, there's a mantra that I always use, and that is this: I only see what wants to be seen by me.
Exactly.
And she came there, like I said, it was a cry. And even though she didn't understand how deep her cry was, thank God something happened that to help her.
So here you are, you're like you said, because it's your destiny or you will it to be. Here you start going into the darker aspect of, ministry and paranormal research, whatever you want to call it. Like I said, I know there's a lot of religious, and this is not any particular denomination who this is the line in the sand for them. If it's dark or, they're like, no. Well, crisis in the family, I can handle that. Problems with their teenagers, I'll be there. Crisis in the marriage, absolutely. Something like this, nope.
Right.
Did you find at any point where you either targeted, because sometimes when you become the foe for some of these, especially if they're kind of dark, you got to target yourself because they don't want your intervention.
Yeah, they don't want you. Yeah, because your presence will displace theirs.
Yes.
And so, especially suicide, people that have addiction issues or, chronic depression and suicidal ideation, I believe I believe that these people are absolutely called to help other people.
Yes.
And so what these entities will do is they will try to take them out as early as they can, because when these people recognize who it is they see in the mirror every day and how powerful that person can be,
yes,
then these entities have no authority. They can't do anything with them. And but let's get back to the clergy. What's interesting to me, and one of the things that I really, really disliked about the tradition that I come from, is that religion assumes that it defines what a demon is.
right,
And my problem is, if you're clergy and you're going to tell me what a demon is, but you're not going to want to help me deal with the demon that you tell me it is, no. Then,
yes.
So that's my issue. One of the issues with religious dogmas concerning the field of demonology.
Yeah, I tell everybody, back in 2016, Father Amorth, which was the exorcist for the Vatican, passed away, and I read a story a few months later that they were having these newly minted priests coming out of the seminary receiving holy orders, and there were no takers on becoming the exorcist. Some of them get, I know that they offer training in exorcism to some of these priests, but nobody wanted to be the young Father Amorth. Nobody wanted to be the Vatican's exorcist. Okay,
I know, it's sad,
and it's because, and I tell everybody, let's face it, you're thinking you have the big guns to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying that people don't realize that this is the part where, for lack of a better word, that saying angels fear to tread, because whether it's Hollywood, we've been fed this line. Other times I think it's accurate, and sometimes I even think they underestimate the danger involved in it if you don't know what you're dealing with.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
And as a matter of fact, I want to say less than a week ago, I heard some statistics about suicides being, like, I think the second leading cause of deaths in the United States among, it was like young people into middle age. It was astounding, the rates of suicides.
Oh yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this has always existed for various reasons. But you would think, why is this happening? And then the question, at least for me, comes up what we talk about. Are you looking at a huge amount of people being influenced, like you said, into feeling feelings that are not really theirs?
Absolutely. 100%. I mean, at least in my position, 100%.
Right. That hopelessness where I'd rather not exist.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've encountered those entities as well. And it really concerns me, because I think that if we understood how the attachment works, what its motives are, and how to get rid of them, but more importantly, how do we approach it? How is it approaching us? And I'm going to employ an allegory for all of your listeners out there, because I want you guys to think about this, because I think it's pretty interesting. But it really shows us the vast void that we have in this field. Watch this. So if a man steps into a pool of water and he displaces the water, the displaced water is called a wake, right? There's a wake in the water. Now, the wake in the water is not the presence in the water. It's not. But it happens because of the presence that's in the water. So for 3,000 years, I believe that the field of demonology has been defining, measuring, quantifying, and preaching and teaching what they know about the wake in the water. But they have not yet faced the entity that displaced the water itself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. We're addressing the symptom versus the cause.
Yes, absolutely. Not only that, but we are treating people. Let's say a demonic possession was a sickness, and we are doctors. We are treating their sickness based upon how it makes us feel.
Yes. Yeah.
You understand? So that's why I'm writing my book, is because we have to begin to not transvaluate, but reevaluate. We have to redefine this thing. And I'm thankful for the torch that we've had and been given, but it's turned to ash, and now we're groping in the darkness. And so that's why I'm writing my book, and that's why I'm trying to introduce new concepts into this discipline so that we might see more.
Yes, I think that, and I think sometimes people have, because I think sometimes when other human beings do something, whether it's self-destructive or destructive to others, they want something concrete to blame.
Yep.
And when you start talking something as intangible as a spiritual interference,
Mm-hmm.
powerful enough to alter a person's actions or
Oh yeah.
mindset, people have a hard time grasping that or
Mm-hmm.
accepting it.
Yeah.
And they do so at their peril, or never, like you said, never really understanding what the true cause was of what happened or why this person did what they did.
Absolutely.
And, sometimes I've had people that say, well, mental illness, this is all tied into mental illness. I said, you know what? One does not exclude the other. You can have somebody with legitimate mental illness, as let's say, for example, some type of chemical imbalance in their brain, and they can
Mm-hmm.
still have spiritual interference.
Right.
Okay, which basic sometimes what you see is their symptoms get worse. They become more difficult to handle than they
Yeah.
normally would, just because if all they had was the symptoms
Mm-hmm.
of the disease, let's say that part of their brain was diseased, but because of the spiritual attachment, they become difficult. They just are worse than they wouldn't be normally, and it's like one thing doesn't exclude the other.
Right. Right. And they can happen simultaneously.
Yes, absolutely, they can. They can, and when you were talking about the different stages of
Oh
whether
yeah.
it's a obsession or influence or oppression or out and out. Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
What's your opinion, or have you run across what they call perfect possession, people that have actually
Yes,
volunteered,
I
or
have.
what's been your experience with that?
Well, what we're dealing with at that point is an entity that wants skin.
Mm-hmm.
He
Yes.
wants a body.
Yes.
And I just did an interview the other day, and I finally got to a point in my research where I'm pretty confident I know a little bit more about it than I did before. And what happens in perfect possession, I'm going to take everybody by the hand, and we're going to go all the way to Haiti for a second, okay?
Here we go.
We're going to dive into the work of the German anthropologist Fritz Kramer.
Mm-hmm.
Fritz Kramer wrote a book called The Red Fez. And in the Red Fez, he talks about his experiences with what they called African possession art.
Okay.
And so he would study, the natives and the religious rites that they would employ. And he said that many times they would be possessed.
Mm-hmm.
Their sages, magic men, would be possessed by an ancestor, and that ancestor would begin to scar the flesh of the person it possessed. So they would actually take rocks and scar their entire body.
Okay.
And so he asked them, he said, why is it that they're scarring themselves? They said, because once that person is fully possessed, that scarred flesh is now its social skin.
Okay.
So perfect possession, in my mind, is the scarification of someone. They might not even know it,
Yes.
but they are being worn as a garment.
Yes.
And that happens with a profound amount of consent. So it's feeding off of you, and you're feeding off of it. And together, you guys have united, even subconsciously. You have collaborated with this entity, and now it's using you
Yes.
as a bodysuit.
Yes.
That's terrible.
Yes. They want what they can't have, and in some cases, depending, I imagine, on the personality, some of them, let's say, let's go again with the addiction. They don't have a body. If you don't have bodies, you don't have nerve endings. You can't experience the rush of, let's say, the drug you used to take.
Right.
So you need that body to
Yep.
experience it. And that's when you go into what you're talking about, that they want the skin. They want you don't have anymore when you die, when your physical body dies.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, that gets into this because, there's a lot of people in this field that believe that they are harvesting our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true, but that's not good enough. They're harvesting our attributes.
Yes.
And that right there it's another chilling revelation. But that's why I separated the two, the exterior entity and the interior entity. One of the reasons I did that as well is the study of a heart transplant.
Yes. That's
Do
so
you know where I'm
interesting. Yes. Yes. Talk
what?
more about that.
All right, this is very good. I love it. So what happens is, okay, you have the guy, and I forget his name, but anyways, he had a heart transplant, and let's say that heart is an exterior entity. Okay, so it's an exterior entity, even if it's inside the heart transplant person, the recipient. It's not an interior entity until it responds to you as the recipient to the rest of your body.
Yes.
And then you respond to it, and then it conforms to you. You conform to it. Now you have an interior entity. Now, before that happens, though, it will groom you. Ooh, it will groom you into yielding consent to it.
Yes.
So, and that's why I'm doing my best to separate these two. Because, in Catholicism, the tradition was, okay, there's obsession and there's possession, there's, infestation and all of that. I think that we need to simplify it. There's an exterior, there's an interior. Now we can dig more into their motivations because the motivation of an exterior entity is to be an interior entity.
Yes.
But once it's an interior entity, its motivations change.
Of course.
And so that's why I'm doing that. And it's a very interesting part of my research that I really love talking about.
No. And if you think about it, if somebody comes and knocks on your door to the house and tells you, "Hey, I want your house," you're not going to open the door.
Right. Absolutely.
They're gonna try that once they gain entry. And also one of the things that I sometimes I've spoken about, which is invitation. And a lot of us think of invitation as in the normal invitation that we think of. And an invite, I think in the metaphysical world, takes a lot of different forms, especially the way sometimes these entities see it. And you might think, I never invited this thing in. And you'd be like, think about maybe what you've done or said, which it translates to them as an invitation.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. And the data, the research, that completely validates it. I mean, we have cases, especially, okay, now here's what's interesting. Especially in the D-book, or in the States we call it a Dybbuk. In the Dybbuk experience, the Dybbuk and the incubus are the same entity.
Right.
The Dybbuk the D-book, according to Hebrew, did not stem from a box. The D-book was a possession demon.
Right.
The D-book, this is interesting because I've never heard anybody teach on this, and I don't know why. I mean, it's just, but the D-book, according to Jewish antiquity, was the incubus who would groom its victim into coition.
Yes.
That's an incubus. So again, we got to deal with these terminologies are what's really tripping us up here. But one of the ways that the D-book and incubus would gain consent from their victim is by appearing as a deceased spouse, or whispering into their ears at nighttime. And it was basically seduction. Or this is very interesting as well because this gets into UFO abduction. Yeah. Well, another thing they would do is they would come to these women as I guess, if they had a particular type, a particular affinity for an ethnicity, they would conform themselves to the memory of their victim,
right?
Hoping for coition. Now, that is exactly what happens, especially in Dr. Carla Turner's work. The Masquerade of Angels. She talks about that, how they will change their form in order to take something from you. Now, the question is, what are they taking from us? And why are they needing it? What is the motivation behind them wanting relations with a mortal?
Well, it depends. How that old and I know it's part of the mythology, let's say of the vampire, where it needs to be formally invited in order to go in, that there's certain laws within, if you want to call it the metaphysical world, where, like you said, that acceptance, whether you start with the invitation and the acceptance, the gradual, whatever, that have to be extended or have to be done for it to go to the next step. Okay?
Yes. Yep.
Now,
you're right.
And this, and we'll get later on, and I'll ask you about whether, with the so-called demons, are we talking a human spirit that evolved so dark it turned into a demon, or are we talking two separate, types of entities? But some people don't realize that what that entity wants, besides the corruption of the human spirit, is once you have that human under your control, how much harm and agony and suffering can you make it cause? Especially if this is an entity that craves and feeds off of this type of energy.
All right. Yeah.
Okay. It cannot do it without a human body in this plane.
It can't.
It cannot.
Yeah. It has to be, it wants to be at a particular place.
Yes.
And a particular time. And it cannot without human partnership.
Yes, exactly. It could be whatever, but without that physical body, that human whatever, it just can't. It can't. That's because we, with our physical bodies, we are where we're supposed to be. We are incarnated beings.
Right.
We belong where we're at, which is why once we don't have bodies, we should not be here anymore.
Absolutely.
So for them to execute or do anything, whether it's a question of feeling or causing harm, or they need that human body, and to either suborn or just whatever, like you said, the interior, the original soul within that body, to manipulate it to do whatever it wants it to do, whether it's have a drink, shoot up drugs, or go and do horrible things, and appear to be a very sane person. Like you said, masquerading as pretending to be normal. How's that?
There we go. Absolutely. And Fritz Kramer called this mimesis.
Wow.
In other words, it's mimicking us.
Yes.
And I will say this: we're getting back into consent. So not only is consent a symptom of possession, but when you get into the cases in the 16th century, which in academia we call it the age of the demoniac, we had entire towns would be possessed.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, even convents. I mean,
convents that people think of all places, nuns. Hello,
it's crazy. I mean, it's really wild stuff. But what I began to do is I compared the notes of the D-Book phenomenon, their experiences, their cases, and I compared what I found there with the notes of Father Sinistrari of Amino. And for those who don't know Father Sinistrari, he was a Franciscan exorcist. And his specialty, his greatest work, was on the incubi and succubi.
Okay.
And he uncovered something that is mirrored throughout all of the world concerning possession in, these demons.
Okay.
What happened with Sinistrari was that he collected a group of doctors, and he would talk to people, victims of incubi, and he would get their stories. And then when they would die later on in life, he would call these doctors in, and he would say, okay, we're going to do the autopsy here. But, the lady that, in question, she told me, A, B, and C happened. He said, I want to get some physical evidence of this. Okay. And so what they realized was that entity, while it had groomed her and it had manipulated her into consent, but that's not all. Matter of fact, that entity had scarred them in very hidden places that no one would see, right?
Oh, interesting.
So yes, so even as much as they had one man who had, it's actually another woman. She had scars beneath her eyelids.
Oh my God!
Right. This is chilling. Now I'm telling you, this is very, very dark research right here, and I really do think we need to get it out there.
Yes, absolutely.
Because and what they begin to do is they psychologically they sat down and said, okay, now we are starting to understand the victimology here.
Yes.
And they said, so what is its purpose? What is it doing? And that's why demonic possession and incubus and debug phenomena, that's why it's such a grave danger to us.
Yes.
Because not only will it get consent from you, but it has the potential to mark you in places you didn't even know were there.
Right.
And so that happens in the debug cases. We have cases where, the devil's mark,
Yes.
right?
Yes, I've heard. Yeah, that was one of the things that's when they, with the witch trials, that was one of the things that was looked for.
Of course. So you have the devil's mark. You have the scarring in Haiti, right? You have the scarring. It's the social skin. And then like, okay, one of my favorite authors is R.E.L. Masters. And he wrote a compendium of cases, occult cases, where, demons would have coition with a woman or a man. And he wrote a book called Eros and Evil. And in it, he describes the very same phenomenon, where you would have a woman who, if she was a witch or whatever she was into, but she would willfully invite that demon to have relations with her. And at the end, she would be marked. He would have marked her.
Yes.
Now, my point in all of this is that consent does not end with possession. No. It will mark you. Now, I have a question. Why would they mark a victim of theirs? That's a good question.
A good question. If you think about it, it's almost like, and like you said, it might not be visible.
Right.
As a matter of fact, maybe they strove to put it in hidden places.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
Right. Normally, in other words, they wouldn't want the branding to be in a visible spot. And mostly, it's a form of, how can I say, of proof of ownership or proof of dominion,
yes. Yep.
or there's, I want to say, with this entity, there is no ego, as in I need to prove it to anybody that sees this person that they're mine.
Yes, right.
Okay,
and that's exactly right. That's where I've come to as well. It's that branding. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And in other words, it's visible. It's the actual physical body that I have so much power over you. Mm-hmm. That I can make you scar your own physical body, because most human beings protect their bodies, as if you under normal circumstances. In other words, mm-hmm. And I understand that there's traditions in certain cultures where they'll do a certain scarring in a ceremony because whether it's a coming of age thing, that's different. Mm-hmm. I'm talking here,
but that's a way different thing.
Yeah, we're talking here something different, and I think that, now let me ask you, mm-hmm. do you think that, because you were talking originally about these spirits, contrary to, people thinking of them as demonic or non-human, mm-hmm. in some cases they're human, do mm-hmm. you think that they're something that started out as a human spirit, maybe from a very dark personality, okay, mm-hmm. will ever evolve into being demonic or non-human, or is there
yes.
Okay.
And matter of fact, if you get into the etymological origin of the word demon, mm-hmm. it wasn't always horns and hooves. It could have been a malevolent spirit, or it could have been a good spirit.
Right.
So absolutely, and that's what I call the postmortem stress disorder, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, where they've actually they've molted. Because again, I'm employing new terms, but it's the same concept said in a different way, but it adds value to it. They molted their body.
Yes. And
they're evil. And so now you're dealing with a molted being who has, and that's why I say, because people will always come in and say, you know what, it felt like a devil, it felt like a demon. I have the ability to tell the difference. And I'm saying, not really, no. Mm-hmm. Obviously, any entity that's disembodied would feel alien to us.
Of course.
But
No, it's life against anti-life, and your body's like going, And I tell everybody, if you were a real SOB in life, what, you think you die and you improve because you're dead?
Oh
Not
yeah,
really.
yeah.
You know?
You wisened up, right?
Yeah,
After
right.
you're
Yeah,
not
no.
makes no sense. And it's, you know what it is? It's just these answers are antiquated. They don't work anymore.
No.
We need new vocabulary. And yeah, so let me go back to the scarification aspect of
Yes.
this,
Yes.
if we can. Now, scarification is that it's different than mutilation.
Mm-hmm.
Mutilation has no pattern. It's just the disfigurement of something or someone.
Right.
Now, in anthropology, one of the things that R.E.L. Masters said was absolutely incredible. He said that scarification occurs to the possessed person in Haiti because it was the imprint of culture, not the culture of the living being, but the culture of the disincarnate, the imprint of culture. Now, one of the things I love to do is I love to walk the knife's edge between UFO abduction and
Yes.
demonology. Now, watch
Okay.
how closely this mirrors each other.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to tell you that scarification was the imprint of culture, it makes sense. But what if I changed one word, Marlene, and I said that scarification is the implant of culture?
Wow. Yeah,
Right?
it changes. It
Everything.
changes the context totally.
Gives you chills. It gives me chills
Yes,
because
it does.
it's starting to become clearer to us. Finally, our eyes are adjusting to the darkness. Now, one of the things that I really enjoy about Masters, again, it's a scarification. And, you know, again, it's the social skin. But if scarification is the imprint or implant, I guess, of culture, then what is happening in these incubus and deboot cases? Are they imprinting a part of themselves onto us because as though like a serial killer would or
Right.
some watch this. This is my theory on this.
Okay.
I think what's happening is that they're marking us so that they can find us later, not when we're alive.
Oh man, that's very. Oh, that's dark. That's
I'm
like,
telling you. I'm
if you
telling
think
you.
I'm done with
I
you,
don't.
what, you got a live body? Oh,
Yes,
that's.
I got chills. Yeah, because and I'm telling you, this is a very, very, and I have never had an interview where I've gotten to this depth. But yes,
And
yes, it's victimology. I'll
and you
tell
know
you where
what?
I
I,
have.
I I have heard, and I haven't heard it because of that, but I have heard in some cases of hauntings where there is one dark spirit that holds everybody, other spirits there hostage or has dominion over them.
Right. Absolutely. And if we can embrace that thought, now we can go through human history, even in biblical antiquity, and realize why the devil wanted Moses' body. We never asked that. I never asked that question in theology. I never, I didn't have any frame of reference. But now that if that's a possibility, okay, let's look at possession as the hopeful embodiment of a disincarnate spirit. Well,
Right.
why wouldn't they try to use a dead body?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what Sinistrari was studying because he would realize that the purpose of possession was not just, okay, I'm going to have a body, but they would take human substances from their victims. They would take it from one place and give it to another person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they begin to live again. And
Oh
that's a
yeah, it's
very
like if that thing. If you think that death is the escape hatch, God, can you think about it? That doesn't matter because they're still waiting for you. You're still mine now and after.
right. Once that consent, yeah. So, and that's why suicide is such a very grave thing
Yes. Yes.
because it's you disfiguring your entire existence. So yeah, that's what I believe is happening, and I've never told anybody that, Marlene.
Well, you know
Never.
what? I that sounds very plausible because a lot of people. I know every culture sometimes has different traditions with their dead, but there
Yep.
are some cultures that when somebody dies, even if it's a family member, they don't even speak the person's name.
Yes.
They because they're so afraid. In other words, they don't want to call it back. In other words, there's like a time period where they want to let the spirit like go. They don't
Right.
talk about the person. They don't handle any of their things. It's like we're gonna make believe this person doesn't exist,
Yep.
and there's reason for that. There's a
Absolutely.
reason for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and of course, um, I mean, the way we handle, and I'm going to say in Western society, that we have the traditions, and by this I don't say there's a lot of people that die and spiritually they're fine and they go on to wherever they don't get, they're gone, they're not hanging back, they get it, they're ready to go, they're not stuck. But I think that there's a portion because of sometimes not expecting for an afterlife to actually exist.
Right.
Like, you mean this is not it? Or fear of let's say the traditional hell or judgment, or even if they weren't a particularly religious person when they were alive, for some reason it's like I'd rather hang out here in the gray area than be where I'm supposed to go, because who knows what's going to happen there.
Yep, you're correct. You're correct. And they still have their same, what I call the same self-inherited belief system they had.
Yeah, of course.
They were alive. It's self-inherited. I think that's the greatest hell that could exist.
Yes.
It's not flames.
It is a horrible, horrible thing. And every time I'm gonna segue real quick into when you see these paranormal shows where the people say, "Oh, it's okay, if Auntie wants to hang out with us," and I'm like, "What are you doing? Do you know that Auntie's soul is trapped? Let her go. Wish peace be with you, but you must go." Why would you want to allow or ask a human soul, to exist in a state of in between, of incompletion, of sorrow, of frustration, of maybe witnessing human beings do what they can't do anymore because they don't have a live body? Every time I hear that, I'm like, sometimes people don't realize a ghost, Evan, is a human soul.
Yep.
Okay, you're talking about a human soul, not the Casper, like the friendly ghost kind of deal, like a cartoon.
Right.
Talking. Think about it. It's a human being whose soul is, for various reasons. And again, now let me ask you. Let's talk about what is your advice for people to avoid this happening?
Possession or?
Well, let's start. It doesn't have to go. That it starts slow.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
Let's talk about. Let's go with the influence where, I don't know, maybe you're stupid and you're at the wrong place at the wrong time, or you dabble in what you shouldn't, or you have some vulnerability in you. What is it that where people need to go? Oh, wait.
Yeah. Okay.
Before it becomes more entrenched. In other words.
Okay. Well, the first thing is addiction.
Yes.
If you have a genetic predisposition to a certain thing, that genetic predisposition has happened for a reason. Okay. And that's what, and see, in religion, they called it a generational curse. No, it's the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So if you have that in you, avoid it. Avoid whatever it is, because that entity will go through the bloodline.
Yes.
And it will attach itself to you.
Yes.
Number one. Number two, you cannot control what you attract sometimes, or a lot of the times. I mean, there's a lot of things that happen to you, but not because of you. Right. So don't go, how about this? If you've heard that a house was haunted, right, and they see things and feel things and everything, don't run to it.
Oh, I'm so glad you're saying that.
How ridiculous.
I'm so glad you're pointing that out.
You know what? And again, this is a symptom of the complete, and I'm not critiquing or criticizing, but demonologists in this field, there are some people who are so immune to the truth, they've become complicit with the lie. Yes. And the lie is, hey, listen, go in there. You'll have fun. Yeah. Until you go in there and you walk into something and you're not ready for it. And then for the rest of your life, you've given it consent, and you lost your job, your credit, your divorce, all this stuff.
Oh man, you are echoing my words, and I am so glad you brought that up.
High five, sister.
Oh yeah, you know what? Everybody thinks of the Hollywood. Oh, furniture starts flying around in your house. It's like no. It starts by your life unraveling, sometimes in slow degrees.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Absolutely.
And it might take a while if you ever get to the point of seeing what truly was the point of origin of when this started to happen. And if you have somebody, or you're smart enough or whatever, you might realize exactly what you described. Man, it was after that I went to that place or whatever.
Yes.
That, and some people never get there, by the way.
They don't, and it goes back to the old African proverb: a man can die at 18 and be buried at 84.
Yes.
And so that's the danger these people are risking. Yeah, it won't kill you, but you're already dead.
Oh, of course. It doesn't. But people don't understand, especially if we're talking a malevolent entity. It doesn't want your death. It wants your suffering.
Right. That's how it gets attributes.
Exactly. You can't get no suffering from a dead person. It wants your suffering. It wants your, and suffering not only that you feel, but what you can inflict on others as well.
Yes.
It's a ripple effect.
It is, and it's a collaboration of sorts. And it reminds me of a case I had in state over from Ohio, or actually it was in Cincinnati. Yeah, Cincinnati. Anyways, my mother had called me, and she's like, I had an issue with my son, and things were going on in his life. And I talked to the son, and I guess he would go into like fits of rage. Okay. And his own memory and consciousness would be displaced by another entity. And one of the interesting things that he told me, he said, I don't want an exorcism. And I said, well, I don't think you need one, but I do want to meet with you. And I said, but it's an 1.5-hour drive. I don't want to go there if you really don't want to be helped. You know what I mean? Because we have been just having problems before.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, when this is on me, he says, I learn things about people from it.
Oh.
Yeah. And so there are people out there, and again, that speaks to perfect possession. There is consent.
Yes.
And I gave him a very, very grave warning. I said, listen, sir, I said, I know that you think you're feeding on it more than it's feeding on you.
Yeah.
But when it's done with you, you will be nothing anymore. It will have waned you down. Your petal will wither in the sun. And I said, what you're experiencing now is not worth who you will become in the end.
Yes.
So, and again, that speaks to the ignorance that just pervades this field.
Well, and this is the thing, especially let's say when you're talking to somebody that's younger. You tell them, and by the way, this might take 50 years.
Yeah.
Huh? Yeah, 50 years, 60 years, maybe 70.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like next month, you'll be in the throes of this. No, it might like, what is it? It'll eat you while you're alive without killing you, by the way, for a lifetime. And then possibly in the afterlife as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will keep you alive. Yes, think about that.
Of course.
And when it's done, you're just, it's so sad. And and you know as well as I do, in malevolent hauntings, it's nothing for an animal to die. No. How many times have we heard of a rabbit or a cat where it just wouldn't eat and it just died out of nowhere, no real cause?
Yes.
Yeah, they're feeding on it.
Yes, and people don't realize the subtlety, I guess, is because I guess everybody thinks of all these effects as being very dramatic, and the subtlety sometimes is the best weapon that it has, as far as whether it's ingratiating itself with that person, with their subconscious mind, or on a spiritual level, however. Now let me ask you, and I have read about this from other sources who talked about spiritual attachments. Where do you think that there's any attachments that are extraterrestrial in origin?
That's a big question. I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I have no idea. Okay. My focus has been so much on demonology. I will say this. I believe that the extraterrestrial field, abduction, aliens, I think they're both after the same thing.
Well,
I could say that.
And this is the thing. Because when you say E.T., you always think of extraterrestrial as in linear from outer space. What if we're talking an interdimensional being?
Yes.
And, of course, we're making it what everybody thinks of as a stereotypical extraterrestrial, whether it's the gray or whatever, but it comes from the plate. Maybe that does exist, but what if there's, quote unquote, an extraterrestrial, which is really an intradimensional being who does have that ability, and does it for whatever reason, God, like you said, that's like the horizon becomes misty there. We don't know where it goes.
Yeah, it's a good question though. I'm going to think about that for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, if you there's a gentleman by the name of Dr. Bill Baldwin who wrote about that. He's already passed away, where he came across it inadvertently while working with some clients, where what was there was not a dead person, as in what we think of, or anything like that. That he, in other words, he didn't go looking for it. He just fell into
just shut up.
That. All of a sudden, like, this is a what, that kind of thing. It's very interesting, and sometimes, and I've heard of, there's a lot of school of thought of that, because obviously this thing with extraterrestrials is becoming a more valid point, whereas before it was, the UFO or ufology, I don't want to say, but a lot of people said, oh, okay, like flying saucers, sure. Lately it's gotten more attention, and of course there's been admissions that there's actually been government-funded programs to track them. Again, UFOs doesn't necessarily have to be extraterrestrial in origin. They're just unidentified.
Right. We just don't know what they are.
We just don't know what they are. But of course, nothing. There's no spiritual angle there to it. Okay, this is just strictly some type of vehicle that we just don't know what it is. We're just going into now and I'm glad you said that, as far as people recognizing their vulnerabilities, whether it's through bloodline, generational. Let me ask you something. Do you believe that if one of your ancestors took a vow or a promise, that they could basically inflict it on their descendants?
Yes, the sins of the fathers.
Yes, okay.
Yes, I do. And I also believe that an ancestor can make a deal with an entity.
Okay.
And that entity will come to you.
Okay.
And that usually happens in the occult. We have cases like that as well.
Yes.
But absolutely, yeah,
yes,
100%.
Yes, there's a lot of people don't realize that. They'll think, well, I never did anything, or I. And I'll say, you know what? And I'll say, sometimes you'll even have people that are adopted. My point being that they really sometimes have no idea what their origins, their family of origin is. Okay. And sometimes they'll have these experiences, and it's because sometimes in their background, in their familial background, there was some type of, and I'm going to say, sometimes I imagine there are some descendants that do it willingly and knowingly, as far as knowing their descendants will be afflicted by it. And there's others that, because of who they were dealing with, they thought, oh, it's just me. I'm the one making this deal.
Right.
Never thinking that, that fine print in the contract that nobody reads?
Yeah, it's going to come back to haunt you, literally.
Yeah, and your offspring and so forth, and so, whatever. And whatever the case might be of what they were dealing with and what they were involved in. So let me ask you something, Nathan. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way? What is your website address? So for my podcast listeners, even though I'll include in the credit to the show.
Okay. Well, my website is njgillis, GILLIS.com. I'm in the process of updating it as well. But you can find me I'm on Instagram as the Nathaniel Gillis. I'm on Facebook as the Nathaniel Gillis. You can find a lot of my material on YouTube. Okay. And so my book, A Moment Called Man, is on sale on Amazon.
Okay. All right. And you said you were writing another book for this? Is that going to be out this year?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. It'll be out within the next 3 months.
Okay. So
I'm excited. I'm going to put all my work and all of my blood, sweat, and tears into this book, and hopefully it'll add something to our.
What do you do any events, or if somebody needs help, do you do it remotely, or does it have to be in person? How do?
For the most part, I went to houses.
Okay.
I can do. I obviously I can help people through Skype or help people, through emails and everything. Whatever, if you need advice or if you need consulting, I do that as well.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So that's how to get a hold of me. That's where I'm at.
Okay.
And my website will have my last year's dates and where I was last year.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm updating it for this year because I'm gearing up for a huge year.
Yes. What we were talking about originally about 2020. Let's talk about that a bit. Just a minute.
Okay.
What do you think is coming up starting now in 2020?
Okay. I think that there's research that is going to be published.
Okay.
That will stop us from measuring the wake in the water.
Okay.
And start really looking at these entities for what they are, not for what they do or what they've caused. I think that we're going to dig deeper into the biological aspect of possession and the reason they are using our human essence and substances. I believe, I mean, we're going to get into the Nephilim. We're going to understand the link between Nephilim and how they became into this world and what they used, because we're dealing with necromancers.
Oh, yes, God.
Masterful even disincarnate necromancers.
Oh, I never heard of that. A disincarnated necromancer. Wow.
It's going to be good, sister. I'm excited. I can't wait.
Let me tell you something. People don't... Let me tell you something. I live in Miami. Okay? People don't know that necromancy is one of the most powerful magical systems out there. Very dangerous and very dark.
Oh, yeah. And if you... I mean, even... Okay, how about this? We have ghosts that will come and say, listen, bury my body properly.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Why? Because there's an aspect of necromancy here.
Yes.
And that scarification is an act of branding. Yes. Not just that I will know where you are when I need you, but it's possible to let everybody else know that are doing the same thing who you belong to.
Yes.
I mean, it's a big
they bind it. They bind that soul. They bind that spirit. They bind that disincarnated spirit. And sometimes they'll use, and I tell everybody nowadays, that you could get human skeletons or bones legally. It's not illegal. I say, but why do you think these people smuggle body parts or bones? Why? When they could buy it. Right. Because it has nothing. The ones that you buy legally, there's nothing attached to it. It's just a bone. What they really want is that portion of the body to bind that spirit that still might be with it. Okay. I mean, I've heard of people smuggling. I mean, even here in Miami, we've had people trying to come in with body parts. In other countries, sometimes, because you always think traditionally of graves being dug up for people trying to rob the corpses or things like that, or once upon a time 300 years ago when people were using for anatomy classes, and it's like not now. It's used for dark magic. I read a story about, I want a year ago. This happened in India. There was a train that was going to the border of China. And they discovered a man traveling with, I don't know, almost 100 total bodies or body parts or skeletons. He had gone and dug up all these corpses. And he was going to sell them on the black market. And everybody thinks immediately medical. It's like, no, they're being used for dark magic.
Yep. Yeah, they are. And it's a very disturbing aspect of this that rarely gets really talked about.
Yes. And people, because everybody thinks, necromancy, sometimes people think of it as in divination, summon the spirit and have it tell you whatever it is that you want to know. But if that body, for whatever reason, and this is getting back to what you were talking about as far as the burial.
Oh, yes.
Let me tell you something. I haven't got to a cemetery in a bit, but I could walk into just about any cemetery here in Miami, and I guarantee you I will find some type of offering, as in a dead animal, usually chickens, thrown over over into the graveyard, not outside of it, inside of it. Absolutely, all the time. I've gone and I have found like these older graves that sometimes are up like in between the spaces that there's a bundle there, and it's like I'm not even gonna go there, but I know what's in there, or I have a good idea what's in there. Okay, why do, I mean, if the thing is that you're doing some type of invocation or some type of, why do you, if that's the thing and you're done with it, why can't you just dump it anywhere? No, because there is a certain significance to graveyards and cemeteries.
Yes, there is.
And that's a whole other show, as a matter of fact.
We could, oh my God.
Yes.
We can go through hours of discussing these topics because there's so much to talk about.
Yes. And there's people that, contrary to what they think, that this is like, superstition, that does not believe that anymore, who believes in that, who practices that. That was done 100 years ago. It's like, I beg to differ. Differ. That's currently in use a lot. And from there, we can just tippy-toe over into human sacrifice, by the way.
Oh, we can. And we can go in this direction as well, because we can go anywhere. This is exciting. This field is it's a terrifying reality, but then again, it's fascinating. But I'll tell you what, another reason I think that these entities are necromancers is because they're employing not satanic rites, but occultic rites.
Yes. In
haunted houses. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Mariology, there's two definitions of Mariology. Number one, it's the worship of Mother Mary. Number two, it's the sacrilegious rite of demeaning Mother Mary or turning a cross upside down. Now, that rite did not originate until the 18th century.
Really?
And it originated in the occult.
Okay.
Now, watch this. This is very good here. This is very interesting. The purpose of an incantation is the incarnation of its author.
Okay.
So incantation is incarnation.
Yes.
So whoever spoke that word to you, gave you A, B, and C, the mathematic equation to get what you want, whoever authored that will step into the words.
Yes.
And that's why when I go into a house and I see Mariology, I don't ask where or what it is. I ask when it is, because there's only a particular part of history when that originated.
Okay.
You're following me?
Yes.
So what I'm thinking here, and wow, this is crazy, I know, but I think that they're employing, whoever these entities are employing rites, occultic rites that they know, and they're doing it in the afterlife to us, just like they would do it to them if they were in life. Does that make sense? So it's a theory. I'm working on that as well, but there's so many directions to go, and I'm just humbled to be on here with you. And
let me tell you something. That to me is really fascinaing. It really, really is, because it extrapolates from what the stereotypical, if you want to call it even the dark arts, where it's like, I think that there was so many versions of it, like you said, depending on the author, depending on the intention, depending on the darkness, depending on even how long it is, or it wouldn't be, of course, the first thing that's hidden in plain sight or disguised within the opposite, as in maybe something that looks very innocent and pure and religious, used, like you said, in its inverted form. Because
yes, absolutely. Yeah, there we go.
You want the opposite result, but sometimes you have to disguise it a little bit, especially a while back if you didn't want to get run out of town, or whatever. But yes, I think that's happened more than people think. And I hate to say it, because, sometimes people think of, when people get involved in this, in the dark arts or necromancy or devil worship, whatever you want to call it, whatever, but dark, that at some point you get your comeuppance,
Yep.
I hate to say, there's a bunch of these people that did horrible things during their lifetimes, during the practice or at the behest of whatever their practice was, whether it was only them by themselves or whether they were with a group of people, and they die in old age, by the way. In other words, because we always expect that they're going to get there. Sometimes they do stupid stuff, and they get it. They go to jail, or they get executed, or they somebody shoots them, or throws them in the river. But there's a lot of them that they're so good at the disguise part that they live a lifetime of causing destruction
carnage,
and heartbreak, pretending to be all the opposite. Right. And that we can, oh my gosh, John Wayne Gacy, we can go down the list of them, Of course.
I'm a deacon at my church. And then you're like, wait a minute, there's something off here, But yeah, so that's
Yeah,
what's coming.
there's a lot of forms that it comes in, and the
Mhm.
monsters don't always have monster written across their forehead. And when I say
True.
monster, I'm just being,
Yeah.
generalizing, but I'm talking about,
Hmm.
the I don't want to say the cartoonish or, made up monsters. I'm talking about real true monsters
Yeah,
that
it's not Scooby Doo.
prey on the human body and on the soul.
Oh yeah,
Well,
absolutely, man.
eh,
I'm so excited. I mean, we're getting to it. You know what I
yes,
mean?
yes, we are. So I want to wish you the best of luck in all your projects, Nathan.
Thank
I'm
you.
hoping you're going to come back.
I would love
So,
to.
I'll be checking with you, especially once you come out with your other book, so we can talk about your book,
Okay.
about your projects, about everything, because it has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
I feel the same way, Marlene. Thank you for having me and the stories of the supernatural. Hello, guys, and thank you for listening. Thank
All
you
right.
for having. I feel so happy.
Thank you, darling. Take care and Happy New Year. A
You
lot of
as well.
good things for you, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. Blessings on you.
Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. What? I know some of you go, oh, Marlene, let's not talk about that anymore. That's scary. But you know what? If you've been talking, if you've been listening to me before in other shows, depending, of course, on who the guest is that I have and what we're talking about, I've mentioned this before. A lot of people get caught up in this with the paranormal research, and I've mentioned that there's people that have certain vulnerabilities. It could be that have no business getting, not even sticking their big toe into the paranormal pool. And some people say, oh, but yeah, it's so exciting. It's like, yeah, but for you, it's going to open up Pandora's box. God, good luck on closing that again. All right? So, you know what? Content yourself. Like I said, you want to go on a tour, a historical tour, maybe legend tripping light. And I'm going to say it again, a lot of so-called haunted places are not really haunted. Maybe there were once upon a time. Sometimes they've never been haunted, but it's a great gimmick and it makes money for the owners. But every once in a while, you do have a true haunting going there when it's even dark, and or there was something that's gone, never was, but somebody's come on the grounds of whatever. I'm just talking, let's say some type of historical landmark, whatever. And they've done a ceremony, they've done spell work to bring something through that's really dark. Okay? So that's what I'm saying. Some people, it's like, don't do that. Don't go to certain places, especially. And I know there's a lot of people out there that the darker the better, the scarier the better. If I'm gonna go, I want something that's gonna like knock me out of my shoes. And I'm thinking to myself, you don't want that. Nah, you don't really want that. Because when things start happening in your life to or around you, and you're like, I don't want to play anymore, it doesn't matter. And again, Nathan was talking about it, how invitations with these type of entities come in a variety of ways, not the way we always think of an invite, as in RSVP. Yes, a very clear cut, you're invited or you're not. I never said you're invited, but when something is malevolent and dark, it could say, well, I understood it as an invite. You showed up, you were there, you tried to communicate with me. I thought that was an invitation. And you're like, but I technically doesn't matter. Technically doesn't matter with these things. And and again, I want to stress it. I've said it before. When we're talking here, a human spirit, a human soul that's caught an in-between place, because some of them, because they just don't realize or understand they're dead, or some that are dead and they don't want to pass on. They're scared. They're afraid. Hell, judgment, You even have some real hellraisers that think that heaven is boring. It's like, who wants to go and be praying and going, ha 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 ha? And to them, they're like, no, I'd rather try to take over a human and keep on having a good old party time. I mean, what I'm saying is, sometimes there's a lot of reasons why a human soul will get stuck with no body, but not in the presence of the divine. And they can be manipulated, or they become manipulators. A lot of things. And let me tell you something, that thing that he talks about being marked even in the afterlife, that your spirit, basically you are owned by an entity in life and after. That's think about it. That's a hard thing to wrap your head around. Okay, especially for those people that think, when their life is becoming so totally out of, that they're thinking, okay, the ultimate escape hatch, I will off myself or have that, and come to find out that nope, you're right back. You've booted back into being held in place from going into the divine by something that claimed you while you were still incarnated in your body. And I think it points a lot to where are you at spiritually? Okay. And by this, I'm not promoting any dogma, any religion, any spiritual. No, because I think that human beings are complex, but at the same time, they're simple. Okay, there's something in our spirituality, and I hate to say it, but when we look historically, where sometimes churches or religions had so much sway over people that it was too much, I think sometimes the pendulum has swung too much in the other direction, where people want to distance themselves from spirituality or religion, or those things. That was superstition. That was that's for the weak-minded. Blah blah blah. I think that's a mistake. I think that there is a mantle of protection for us as human beings when we have discourse within ourselves spiritually. Almost like the same way you take care of your body, or let's say if you have to, then you take care of your spirit. You honor it. You take care of it. The same way that if you cut your finger or you do some type of injury to your body, you take care of it. Same thing with the spirit or the emotions, that you nurture it, that you take care of it. Depending, for some people it's prayer, for some people it's introspection, for some people, depending on your personality, it could be like a time like to like shut down for a little bit, to think, and to analyze. Sometimes stuff in the spiritual takes a little bit for it to like come to the surface. Like, what is it really that's causing this disturbance for you on a spiritual level, and address it. And by this, again, I don't mean, okay, is that what it is? Yeah, they're taken care of. Sometimes you got to work through things and recognize it, and it's a daily thing. And people say, what? It's something else that I need to do in my long list of to-do lists? And by this, again, I want to stress, this doesn't have to be like something lengthy or complicated. I think there's a lot of stuff out there that's made lengthy and complicated just to make it interesting, and it's not. It could be that protection that you offer yourself spiritually, either by what you expose yourself to watching, listening to, who you're with, or who you're around, what they say, what they put out, that at some point you are honest and have enough self-preservation for yourself, and you go, you know what, this is damaging me. This is not really good for me. And sometimes even let's go with the movies or with programming, whatever. There's times when everything is okay, but there's times where maybe there's certain subjects that you shouldn't watch. And you say, you know what, I'm going to take a time off from this, and I'm just going to watch comedies and lighthearted stuff for a bit. give myself some time to, like, even out. That's how you protect yourself. It depends. Or, and I've spoken about this, or, I'm normally an introvert, but I realize I'm becoming antisocial. I want to spend all my time indoors, away from people. You can't do that. And by this, I don't mean, sometimes you need to go out there and be amongst humanity. And by this, I don't mean going up and shaking hands with strangers, because for some people, I'm one of those. Let's be like, oh, please. No, that's like you're punishing me. But you know what? There's something as human beings to be amongst other human beings. Whether you people watch, maybe you have your spouse or a good friend or whatever, and you go, let's go to this cafe and we'll have something to eat and we'll people watch. Even if it's a bookstore, like places, and let's just talk or just hang out and be among humanity. By this I mean there's a lot of ways, and if you think about it, okay, you're not taking care of yourself physically with that exercise. Maybe what you're doing is you're protecting yourself spiritually, mentally, making yourself kind of in balance and harmony, which is always shifting one way to the other. So you lessen your vulnerability, okay, from having one of these attachments take a foothold. When he said that story about that one girl who had, he saw a spirit of suicidal tendencies in her, or an attachment, which turned out to be her grandfather. And I asked, why her? Good question. Why her? Maybe there was something going on in her life which made her vulnerable. Maybe her grandfather's intentions were not to hurt her. But we don't know that either, by the way. Her grandfather might have been a real jerk. We don't know. But let's say whether grandpa was a great guy or whether he was an SOB, why did he pick her? Out of all his maybe family members or friends or whoever was around, why her? Vulnerability usually is an answer. It's a very good indicator. And I've said it before, there's something there about like attracts like. Anger calls to anger. Sadness calls to sadness. Darkness calls to darkness. And that sometimes is the link, the coupling, where where things like they, one is the receptacle, like the male and the female, as in where things, they click together, is because of that. That is the vulnerability. That is the attraction. Why you and not this person? Because you're vibrating at the same frequency, and you're more desirable, and you're easier to manipulate. You're easier to be with, whatever the reason. What if? And this is hypothetical, of course, but let's use it. Her grandpa committed suicide. We don't know. This man might have done it. Maybe he had really bad ill health, and maybe he was under a lot of pain, and he decided to kill himself because he just couldn't take it. That happens. But let's pretend that wasn't it. What if this man was profoundly sad and angry, or just sad, depressed, really depression, kills himself. Here's his granddaughter. Might not be really in depression, but she's a teenager. Maybe she's going through some difficult times. She's just maybe sad. Something be going on in her life that for some reason this is what calls him. Because he sees this affinity. Besides the fact that there's blood. That there's a blood tie there. Okay? So sometimes we have to, like I said, take care of ourselves, not only physically, but protect ourselves. And when I say protect, I don't mean as in, I say as in nurture yourself. The same way you take a vitamin, because as a prevention against getting sick or to maintain your health, or you exercise, you do certain things as a prevention, not In other words, you're not reacting, okay? You're handling, you don't want things to manifest. Well, it's the same thing on a spiritual level, which by extension, spirituality and mental, sometimes they're together, sometimes they're apart. We do certain things. And let's face it, and I know sometimes people have a hard time. Nobody is in your skin except you, technically speaking, as in understanding what really makes you tick, what you're really feeling, what you're really thinking. Nobody, no psychiatrist, no psychologist, not even your parents, nobody, your spouse, nobody really truly gets it to the nth degree like you do. Now, it sometimes is a difficult process depending on what's happened to you in your life as far as being truthful. Okay, without wanting to time travel. By this I mean by not trying to alter things that brought you to where you're at that point in time of that introspection. That you're thinking, what's up with me? Why am I thinking this? Why am I feeling like this? What's up? Okay? Get beyond the how you got there in the sense of altering it. You're there. And I feel like this because ... Well, because of insecurity. Because I feel unloved. Because I don't think I'm fulfilling this prototypical person that society thinks I should be. Which, by the way, that's why you see a lot of celebrities or real famous people that commit suicide or do stupid stuff that you're thinking, why would they do that? They've got everything. They've got money, fame, people adore them. They have boyfriends, girlfriends, wives, husbands that are like, wow. From the outside, they look like these people have the perfect life. What happened? Because they never did that spiritual work of taking care of themselves on a spiritual level. Okay, because you know that saying, everywhere you go, there you are. All those external trappings are great, but that does not nurture your soul. It really truly doesn't. And I hate to say it, nobody can nurture your soul for you except you. There's things that you could use or do. You can go talk to somebody. If you know, you can pray, you can meditate, you can whatever. But those are all tools. And nobody can come in and say, well, like you say, oh, I've got a sore muscle, give me a massage. No. Spiritually taking care of yourself, the only one that does it is you. The one that puts up boundaries is you. Okay? As in, you know what, this person or this thing I'm doing, it's starting to violate my spiritual boundaries. I got to take care of this. Oh, no. Just think about it. Haven't you ever been you know how you talk about your body space and how we all have one. Some people have bigger ones. Some, other people are better. We all have one. And that you have maybe somebody you don't know, like, damn, they stand too close to you. And you're like, man, don't you get the body space thing? Like, why are you so close to me? Like, well, it's the same because they're pushing against our boundaries. There's something there, especially when it's a stranger we don't know. Well, it's the same thing, okay, that you have these boundaries in your spiritual life, that when somebody, through their words or their actions or something, or even, like I said, something that you're seeing or being exposed to, you feel it's violating your spiritual boundaries. And you're like, there's a part of you that should say, no. Nope. Either this person's got to go, I'm not going to be exposed to this, I'm backing off, I'm backing down, I'm moving away. That is part of taking care of yourself. That is part of self-preservation. Self-preservation is not only preserving your body and your human life, it's preserving all of you. Okay? And by this, I mean that this is the beginning of making yourself safe from the type of attachments that Nathan was talking about. Okay? And by the way, this is a daily thing. This is a daily assessment that you have about, that you're important. You're important to yourself. There's nothing, by the way, there's nothing to be with conceited. This has nothing to do with you being, people say, oh, well, you take yourself too seriously. It's like, no. I'm not talking about that. And by the way, yes, you should take yourself seriously. Of course. And I say that tongue in cheek, but what I'm saying is when it comes to stuff like that, yes, absolutely, you got to take yourself seriously. And you got to pay attention to stuff that somehow or other, like I said, that ting-a-ling-a-ling goes off and you're like, man, this just doesn't feel right, And sometimes it's better to retreat and examine it and protect yourself and keep those boundaries out where they should be. Because, there's a lot of repercussions that come down the pike for people, depending on the decisions they make about things of this. And again, this has nothing to do with dogma. This has nothing to do with religion, one religion or the other. Nothing, none, zero. This has to do with us as incarnated beings with a spirit and a soul inside of us. Okay? And how important that is. More than you think. Believe me, more than you think. And I've said it before. But anyway, guys, let me get off my soapbox. I hope you like this show. I'm going to have a link to Nathan's website on the credits of the show, so please visit it. I'm hoping to bring him back 2020. I'll be checking with him to see maybe when the new book comes out, so we can bring him back on and talk about his new book and about other experiences, other cases that he's had. I've had a lot of new great guests lined up. And again, you've been seeing slides. I came out with my two most fiction. They're supernatural, horror, fantasy, urban. Sometimes I lose track of what the genre is, which is Walker Between the Worlds, Book One of the Civil Chronicles, and Diabolique, a civil novella. I'm going to be coming out with another one, maybe two, this year. And in the meantime, I'm also submitting a lot of. I'm working on some anthologies, horror anthologies, supernatural. Submitting some short stories, and I'm going to put out the call like I always have. If you're a true believer and you've got some neat experience, please send it to me. So I can, if you don't want to talk, directly, me record you, I'll do it for you. Want to remain anonymous? I'll do it for you. I have no problem. Believe me, I know how to keep secrets. No, and all kidding aside, I honor somebody's wish for discretion and confidentiality. I do not violate that. I don't, absolutely not. To me, it's a question about ethics and morality. When somebody says, this is a secret, or don't say my name, or don't, guaranteed, I will not do it. So, if you want to talk about something, experience, first-hand experience, second-hand, family, something you heard of, and it's neat, it's creepy, whatever, let me know. So again, guys, thank you so very much for being part of my audience. Again, you are all wonderful. I'm going to wish you again the best of good things for you and yours now for 2020 and thereafter. Take care.